Welcome to Jets Central Radio with Mike O'Connor and Joe Caporoso from TurnOnTheJets.com.
Everywhere, I used to cop in Harlem. All of my Dominicanos right there up on Broadway. Pulled me back to that McDonald's, took it to my stash.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to us on the Jets Central Radio. We are back with our third episode, now rolling along here in our third week. We're going to jump right into things this week. We got a jam-packed show, very similar to last week. We want to take a quick moment to thank all our guests who stopped by, Brian Costello, the New York Post, AJ Rosenthal, and Dan Marcus at Turn on the Jets. This week, we're going to talk with Steve Balestrieri of Patriots Central Radio, right at the top about Aaron Hernandez situation. And then a little later, we're going to have Eric Crocker, the Jets defensive back. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with Dalbin Osorio, one of our newest additions to the staff at Turn on the Jets. Real quick, before we get into it with Steve, just want to point out that we have seen some of the comments about some of the volume issues with the podcast, and this will be our last non-Skype headset show. We'll be purchasing that in the next couple of days, and we'll get that up and rolling. I do know a few people are having little issues with that, but I think that will help clear it up for everybody. With that being said, when I asked our co-host, Mike O'Connor, how he's doing tonight, Mike, I gotta be honest with you. I was at a music festival all weekend. My voice is lagging a little bit. How are you feeling over there?
Yeah, I'm feeling fine. I mean, it's been such a crazy day. I can't wait for the show.
It's been a crazy day to say the least, and obviously the main reason for that is the news out of New England about Aaron Hernandez. We're going to go right to Steve Balestrieri, host of Patriots Central Radio, also does some writing for Pro Football Central. Steve, initial thoughts on how sudden everything happened today?
Well, I mean, I think everyone was kind of expecting this. I mean, we heard last week that there was, arrest warrants issued and it was imminent that he was going to get arrested. And then, as things were unfolding last week, the two guys that were with him that were initially questioned by the police, they've kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. And a lot of people were thinking that, okay, the police have got to them and, they're giving them some kind of information. And I still believe that to be the case, because the police kept going back to Hernandez's house. They were going on the side of his home. There's like I don't know if you could see it on any of the newscasts, but there was like a wooded area, and there was a small creek just to the right of his property. And the police were out there. They had divers in wetsuits, and they had metal detectors, and they were obviously searching for something, in particular there. So I think everyone kind of was expecting he was going to get arrested at some point for something. And today he was arrested early this morning about just before 9 a.m. And when he was booked at about 2, he was charged with first-degree murder, and he had 5 firearms charges as well. So this is not looking good for him from the long term. I mean, he's already done with the Patriots. As soon as he was arrested, he was released about 45 minutes later by the Patriots. They took all of his stuff off the shelves at the Patriots Pro Shop. So this was, they've already wiped their hands with him at this point. And things aren't looking good for him in the long-term aspect, because he's looking at life in prison now.
Hi. Well, focusing, less so on Aaron Hernandez and more so looking at how New England's going to adjust to not having him around the field. I think a good point that I saw a few people make today is that really when it comes to replacing Hernandez in the Patriots offense, it's going to be less of a tight end taking on that role and really more of a receiver, because Hernandez spent a big chunk of the snaps lined up, flexed out the receiver position. It's not like you're going to have a guy like Jake Ballard come in and do what Hernandez did. He's just not the same athlete, not built the same way. Who off the top of your head on the current roster is going to do some of the things that Hernandez used to do for the Patriots offense last year? I mean, obviously he was a versatile guy, but his skill set almost trends more towards being a receiver than a tight end, really.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because, a lot of the beat writers in Boston and a lot of us who cover them in different capacities, we always considered Hernandez kind of a tight end in name only. He was more of a wide receiver, like a Dallas Clark type. You know, he was a tight end, but he had a lot of receiver qualities on him, and they really don't have a guy on the roster at this point that kind of fits that role. I mean, they have a couple of big blocking tight ends in Fells and we call him Homano Wanui. I can never pronounce his name correct. Those are kind of like big blocking type tight ends. Jake Ballard is cut from the same cloth. He's a big guy. He's better receiver than the other two guys are, but they don't have that kind of wide receiver tight end like hybrid role. Now, one of the things that we were discussing yesterday and again this morning on our podcast was that, you know, I could possibly see them trying to morph. They have an undrafted rookie free agent, Harrison from Rutgers. He's a really big guy. He's built almost the same size as Hernandez. And I could possibly see them maybe trying to use him in that role because he's like a 6'2", I think he's like 235, which is close to Hernandez's size. But I think in the long run, they're probably going to go outside the box and bring in another player.
Yeah, first of all, Steve, I'd like to say I think that's a great point with Mark Harrison. I really liked him coming out, and I think if it weren't for Gary Nova as the Rutgers quarterback, I think he could have done some really special things there. And you see Nova also hindered Mohamed Sanu's career at Rutgers. It's really sad because Harrison's just a really good player. And I think I'm kind of worried about what they can do with him as a Jets fan. And then secondly, I just can't get worried about Hernandez being gone too much because, first of all, you've got Tom Brady. And second of all, I just start thinking about all the options they have. I mean, can't they just play guys like Shane Vereen and guys like Leon Washington, our newly acquired Donald Jones, in just different sets and different ways instead to substitute for Hernandez's loss?
Well, I think that's going to be the plan, at least initially, until Gronkowski's given a clean bill of health. You know, I do think Jake Ballard will be a good part of the offense, but at this point, before training camp starts, we haven't really seen him in pads yet, so I'm not completely sure if he's 100% yet. But if he is, I think Jake Ballard, and I think we saw that when he played for the Giants, you know, he's not as prolific, I guess would be the word, a receiver as like Gronkowski, but I think he can be very effective, and he's a big guy. You know, he's a road grader as a blocker. So I think they'll use a little bit of him. I think they're going to have to share the wealth, you know, a little bit until all these new guys that they have at wide receiver are on the same sheet of music. And they did bring in Jones. They brought in Michael Jenkins. I'm not really sure both of them are going to make the roster coming out of training camp. We'll have to see. But they do have Julian Edelman back, and he's injury-prone. But, you know, it's going to have to come from a little bit of everybody, and they're definitely going to have to spread the wealth around. Shane Vereen was a guy that kind of scratched the surface a little bit in his first two seasons, and I think he's getting ready for a much bigger piece of the pie this year. And Leon Washington, I think that's a good point with him because he is good out of the backfield. But I think with him, they want to kind of save him for just the special teams returns because they were so woeful at returning kicks last year. The past few years they have been.
Steve, one last question before we let you go. Just, you know, we talked about the AFCs last week, and, you know, really it's the Patriots and everybody else the way it is every year until, you know, we get proven otherwise. So, you know, how do you feel going into this season? I would imagine most Patriots fans are confident they're heading towards another division title, as they should be, but where do you see you guys, where do you see your team stacking up against Denver, Baltimore, and then I guess really maybe that next tier of teams who are considered AFC playoff contenders like Cincinnati, Pittsburgh? Where do you see New England kind of fitting in that group of teams who will be battling it out in the AFC?
I think right now, I think the Patriots are in that second tier, and because they have so many questions on the offensive side of the ball, at wide receiver, and now with tight end. You know, I think that the offense is going to be fine. I do believe that. But I think, especially at the beginning of the season, it's going to be a work in progress. You know, they added some depth pieces that they needed on defense. And believe it or not, I think the Patriots are going to be relying on their defense a lot early in the season until the offense gets on the same sheet of music, so to speak. But I do think, I think Tom Brady back there, he's going to sort things out. They're going to find the players that fit for them and that are going to be able to work within their system. I think it's just going to take some time. Early in the season, I expect the offense to, I'm not going to say struggle, but I do think they're going to have their issues until they get it all unfolded.
All right, Steve, I really appreciate you coming by. We'll definitely get you on for that Week 2 Thursday night game, which I'm sure New England should be solid 12 to 14-point favorites in, just an early guess. But thanks for coming by, and good luck with everything moving forward with the site. We'll make sure we're listening to you.
Oh, thank you, guys. I appreciate you guys having me on, and thank you very much.
What's going on, Jet Nation? You're listening to Antonio Garay, defensive line, New York Jets, and you're listening to Turn on the Jets Central Radio, baby. Be good all day, every day.
All right, we are now going to move on to our second guest. Very lucky tonight to be able to get Eric Crocker, Jets defensive back. They acquired him this offseason. Spent last year playing in the Arena League, and just another talented piece they brought in to compete in their defensive backfield. Eric, thanks so much for taking the time to come on.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We'll get right into it here. Just one thing I was a little curious about is what would you say were some of the primary differences or adjustments towards playing in the Arena League towards playing a more traditional football league, like how you played in college and high school growing up?
I think the biggest thing is just more spacing. The Arena League is just a different game. How you play defense, how you play man-to-man, how you play zone, just a lot of different concepts. They don't have as many things. You can't do as much, as far as routes and things like that in the Arena League. You kind of know what you're going to get typically out of different formations. So it's an easier game to pick up on quicker. But I definitely prefer outside game.
All right, cool, Eric. Thanks for coming on. So I was doing a little research. I noticed you grew up in Stockton, California. I have some family around that area of Cali. And I noticed that it kind of gets a bad rap in terms of, the crime there. So I was wondering how you handled all this crime at such a young age living there.
Well, I'm actually out here in Stockton right now. It's kind of like anywhere else. You kind of know, where to not go. For the most part, you kind of learn, right away. So, as far as me growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up at, I saw, people living lifestyles that I knew I didn't want to live that kind of lifestyle, so I just kind of, stayed away from it. Everybody also knew that I kind of played sports, whether it was, basketball, football, or, track, baseball, so they kind of looked out for me as far as, not letting me drift that way and things like that. The other guys definitely, looked out for me.
Looking at the Jets' defense and, the variety of defensive backs that, are going to be out in training camp competing for roster spots, what kind of unique skill set or what skills do you think you could really bring to this group to distinguish yourself from everybody else?
As far as, my position being undrafted and things like that, my biggest impact that I can make, immediately would definitely be on special teams. So right now, the covering and, all that kind of stuff, just playing defense, I can do that. So a lot of those guys can do that as well. So, I just have to play my part. And right now, that's definitely trying to make more of an impact on special teams, whether it's punt, kickoff, punt return, punt coverage, whatever it is. That's where I specifically have to make a huge impact in that area.
Love that you mentioned special teams, Eric. And I was wondering, when it comes to being an actual corner, what do you feel most comfortable in? Like a scheme that lets you play off and zone in certain sets, or do you like to play man-heavy all the time? What's your preference?
I definitely prefer man, press, and it's great, and that's one of the reasons why, I'm excited to be with the Jets, because we have the option. I know you guys might not know just by watching TV, you guys see us pressed up and it looks like we're in man coverage all the time. But, we actually have the option to press in cover 1, cover 2, cover 3, cover 4, cover 5. So I think that's one of the things that, excited me the most about Rex Ryan's defense. And that's what my strength is, press coverage and running with DBs. And I think that's one of the running with receivers. And I think that's one of the reasons why they, were excited to bring me in and sign me onto the team.
All right. Well, again, we really appreciate you stopping by, Eric. We're going to be pulling for you in training camp up in Cortland, which will be kicking off July 26th. Again, this is Eric Crocker, Jets defensive back. And, thanks again for stopping by, man. I really appreciate it.
This is Darren Wall, quarterback of the New York Jets, and you are listening to Turn on the Jets Central Radio Show.
All right, we're now going to move on to our third guest. Very happy to bring on one of our newest additions to Turn the Jets, Dalbin Osorio. Did I say that right? The first time saying it on air?
Yeah, you got it right, man. You got it right.
All right, nice. We brought Dalbin on staff about a month ago, and he's been churning out some great content for us, including a piece where he took a closer look at Dennis Thurman, the Jets' new defensive coordinator. Thurman's been on staff for a few years in Jets and got the pump up after Mike Pettin took that long, cold road up 95 to the frozen, barren tundra of Buffalo. So, Dalbin, what are your initial thoughts on Thurman as a defensive coordinator, and what kind of struck you about him when you were putting together your research for the article?
Right. Well, I mean, the first thing that you always worry about with coordinators is that, especially promoting from a position coach to a full-time coordinator position, is that you wonder if they're able to handle the job. And with Thurman, the first thing that jumped out at me was this was a guy who played tremendous secondary and was a leader for a Cowboys secondary that was dominant in 79, 80, 81, 80, and 82. And Thurman is a guy who I knew right off the bat could handle the transition. Rex had talked about getting back to fundamentals, becoming more hands-on with the defense. But he needed somebody that he can trust to know that he's going to instill the same principles in the entire defense. And promoting Thurman was the smartest move. And I felt that he was the right guy for the job.
Now, one thing when I was reading back through the article, I think you made a good point about is just how successful some of the secondaries have been that Thurman had worked with throughout his coaching career. I mean, you mentioned he did have a successful playing career for Dallas, and then he was with Rex for some time in Baltimore, and really his resume is actually very impressive. He pointed out a few particular years where they dealt with some injuries, and obviously we know about the Revis injury, but where they still found a way to produce at a high level.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think the biggest thing for him is that, because it's easy to go to that argument, that he had two Hall of Fame players in Ed Reed and Darrelle Revis, but his actual best season in Baltimore was when Ed Reed missed 6 games in 2005. And last year, missing Revis for 14 games, the Jets pass defense was still ranked number 1. And I think that shows not only that he can take players who maybe are on the fringe, like a Kyle Wilson or a Dominic Foxworth, and turn them into actual NFL players by devising some really, really good schemes, and by his teaching ability with the secondary. Because you saw, they picked up Aaron Berry off the street last year, and they drafted Darren Walls, and he turned them into serviceable NFL players. And I think that was the biggest thing for him, was his ability to not only elevate the level of play of the guys that he had, but also mask some of the deficiencies, because Antonio Cromartie, as talented a corner as you may have in the NFL, but had never really truly been a number 1 corner where he was left on an island to cover the team's best receiver, and he did that exceptionally well, and a lot of credit goes to Thurman for that.
Nice, yeah, a lot of good stuff there. And moving on to your Kellen Winslow article, Dalbin, I was noticing you was really positive on Winslow, and most of the feedback from the Winslow move has actually been really positive. So, in your opinion, I was wondering, how much does he have left in the tank, do you think?
I think Winslow has a lot left in the tank. I think a lot can be written about the fact that he asked for his release from New England last year, but I think it's one of those things. I mean, granted, ironically, I think one of the reasons he asked for his release was because they were loaded at tight end, and now if he was there, he'd probably be the de facto starter now because of everything that's going on with Hernandez and Gronkowski. But I think he sees an opportunity now with the Jets to live up to a lot of his potential as the top five draft pick. I think he's a matchup nightmare at 6'4", 250 pounds. And you're talking about a guy who didn't forget how to be productive all of a sudden. It wasn't anything like that. He set records in Tampa Bay, and then he was let go in Seattle because he refused to take a pay cut. So there's signs of immaturity there, but I think now he gets it. I think talent is, like, in his prime, he was arguably a top 3 talent at the tight end position. I think he has a lot left.
Yeah, true. I think what was interesting about Winslow, and a couple, things I had heard, is that he really, when he was signed by New England, he really didn't feel like he was healthy, and he was just not satisfied, putting himself out there less than 100%. He really wanted to take the extra time to get himself ready, and I think obviously he found himself in a good situation here where, I think we've all said this, where if he's 85% of the player he was a couple of years ago, he's potentially the day one starter, really. I mean, I still think him at that level is a better talent than Cumberland, no?
Oh, I agree 100%. And if he's 80 to 85% of who he is, it's a steal on a one-year deal, because you're talking about a guy who he's going to fight for the extra yard. He's a willing blocker. The Jets are going to run the ball. That's still going to be a staple of their offense, and you need a guy who's not going to shy away from contact. Cumberland, if you look at him, Cumberland is more of a receiver. He doesn't really engage defensive linemen or linebackers. Kellen Winslow does. In fact, one of the reasons why he got so much notoriety in college was when in the game against Tennessee he took out 2 blockers on the sweep, and then they interviewed him after, and that's when he made the distinction that he's a soldier, he's a warrior, and it's one of those things that it's a steal if he's 85% of what he is. I do think that you're going to see the Jets limit his reps in training camp, similar to they did with LaRon Landry last year, and I think he's going to have a really big year.
One more question for you, Dalbin, just to clear all this up. With that said, and how high you are on Winslow, what kind of role do you see for Jeff Cumberland?
I honestly don't see Cumberland making the final roster. I don't, because I think that because with Winslow with Winslow being the day one starter, and I do think that because they're still going to run the ball, they're going to put an emphasis on keeping, for example, maybe an undrafted free agent like Mike Shanahan, who can block and who was used in a different ways than the Jets would use in this at Boston College. He was used in a very, very different way. But I think the Jets are going to put much more emphasis on tight ends that can receive and block. And I don't think Cumberland's an effective enough blocker to beat out the guys that are behind him right now.
Yeah, I think that was something that we had discussed a couple weeks back. I think it was with Mike. What he kind of mentioned when we had kind of all talked about this, where if Winslow's going to make the team and be Winslow, he's really your receiving option at tight end. Are you going to carry another pure receiving tight end, or is your number 2 guy really going to be a guy who's a blocker? Is that going to be a free agent? Is it going to be one of the undrafted? Or, and then you also look at, you're going to carry 3 tight ends. It might make more sense to carry a guy like Hayden Smith, who has, that athletic potential, but is more of a project still. So
I agree 100%, because I agree. I think it's difficult to carry. I think it's difficult to carry 3 tight ends in a similar mold. Like Hayden Smith is much more of a project. But if you can carry Kellen Winslow and one of the undrafted guys, whether it's Shanahan or even Conrad Rulin, if you're carrying him, I think Bohannon's going to see a lot of time in the typical H-back position as is. So he provides some extra skills from that position. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. I don't think you carry 3 of the same type of tight ends.
Exactly. I think it's really going to be one of the most interesting positions to watch training camp. Dalbin, thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely.
Loving the content you're churning out for us. Make sure everyone's following him. He is disable_MMI. And what should be the next article we're looking for from you?
So my next piece is actually going to be a breakdown of Antonio Cromartie from the Revis injury on. I'm really looking forward to writing that, because I think Cromartie stepped up his game to a whole nother level after Revis went down, and I think he took that as a challenge. That, and plus the Jets failed pursuit of Namdi a couple of years ago. I think he took that as a challenge to say, you know what, it's not just Revis. I'm as good as him, and I'm really looking forward to writing that article.
This is defensive back Eric Crocker from the New York Jets, and you are listening to Jets Central Radio Show.
Are you looking for an NFL website that doesn't throw rumors against the wall and hope they stick? Then please go to ProFootballCentral.com for up-to-date news and information. ProFootballCentral.com is back and better than ever. We're dedicated to being your number 1 NFL fan site, so come check us out at ProFootballCentral.com and experience the difference.
All right, that was Dalbin Osorio. Very good stuff on Dennis Thurman, on Jets tight end situation. Before we go, we would, of course, be remiss to not discuss the latest tabloid bit of New York Jets news. Now, I don't know what you did this weekend, Mike. I'm pretty sure you were studying for finals, you were writing papers. Were you jumping around with two random girls from California while mooning the camera? Did you have the same kind of weekend as Mark Sanchez?
Unfortunately, I wasn't, even though I know Mark Sanchez did because of that video. And something I want to tell our whole audience is that there's two videos floating around. One is just a 6-second video of Sanchez having a good time. The second is just this comedy gold mine of him dancing with his pants down, and it's a must-see for Jets fans. It's hilarious.
It's definitely funny, and it cracks me up to see, Jet fans react to this on Twitter. The people who hate Sanchez feast on it and go crazy. This is why he can never be a great quarterback. The reason he can't be a great quarterback isn't because he's jumping around naked on a camera with two very attractive girls. Well done again, Mark. I mean, his reputation precedes himself in that department. And then people who like Sanchez will get over defensive about it. I mean, what it is guy's having fun in his off time. He's stupid for being in front of the camera because it's obviously going to get out there somehow. Be better on the field. That's all I care about. I'm not going to go crazy about him, for what he does on his, weekend and his time off.
Yeah, I'm not going to go crazy over it, but I mean, it kind of irks me how, he's fighting for his job, and this is really a turning point in his career where he can make something out of it, and he makes a stupid decision like that. I guess it's not a decision because, he's just having fun, but I just don't see how he lets that get out there. But whatever, that's the story for another day. I do think it'd be really funny if that's his exit as a starting quarterback in the NFL, just totally getting blown off by the team and then just doing that, and Geno starts. And I think it does happen, and I think it's pretty fitting, so I feel like that's just a storybook ending.
You gotta wonder if Geno is contemplating going to Jets West and you see him with Sanchez. Is like, who Sanchez is hanging out with? He's like, whoa, this is what I could be getting into if I go out to California.
He made the right decision in the end, not to go.
Either way, never a dull day in Jets land. I mean, obviously this is a bit of quiet time. We will continue to keep the content rolling. We're pretty loaded the rest of the week here at Turn the Jets, so make sure you're staying with us. I believe we have new articles from 5 different writers on the way in the next 2 days, so make sure you're following the site on Twitter, on Facebook, and stay with us. We're going to be back next week with a new episode, and we're going to keep rolling here. So, Mike, anything the good people out there should be looking for from you in the next week or so?
Well, I've been slacking on my articles, that's for sure, in this first week of summer. I'm definitely getting this one done tonight. I've had a lot of fun writing it because it's about the safety position, and I just started by trying to break down Antonio Allen and Josh Bush, and I just totally erased that and started from scratch because it made me realize how perfect this fit is at safety. And I know it's just a 6th-round pick and a 7th-round pick, but when you look past who the players are, these types of players totally mold into what actually worked for the Jets back in 2009 and 2010, the glory days. So I think I hope it's a really interesting read. I mean, I'm not one to be too positive. I don't want to talk these safeties up to be the next big thing. But eventually, I do see them being a future. I think Rex is really making a big move here that could mean a big difference for the future. So I think it should be an interesting read, hopefully.
Absolutely. We'll be looking for it. Stay with us. Make sure you're following Mike at O'Connor_Jets. You're following me at Turn on the Jets. And we'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.